Welcome to the first episode of the Half Hour Security Podcast. This is Jerry Oxley. I have been involved in IT for more than 25 years. I'm a certified information systems auditor. I'm a Microsoft certified systems engineer, and I have passed my CPA exam. The purpose of this podcast is to help you learn how I find articles that are relevant, and the purpose is to teach you how I look at the articles to identify what is important to me. So tonight we're going to start out with several articles. All of the articles come from two different websites. One is Hacker News and the other one is Security Week. So with no further ado, we'll get going. This article talks about flaws in a popular self-encrypting SSD hard drives, which allows attackers to decrypt data. So basically what that means is this company of two people, Carlo and Bernard, found ways to bypass the disk encryption for all of these types of solid-state drives and made the encryption worthless, so they were able to read all of the data on those devices. So with that being said, if you are using BitLocker will look to see if you have hardware-based encryption on your hard drive. If it does, it uses the hardware encryption and decryption because it's faster. So if you have an infected hard drive, you may want to go into group policy and disable that and force software encryption only. One point of this article is, as good as encryption is, one simple flaw can make all encryption and all of your data be exposed. A new Intel computer flaw exploits the hyperthread and will allow the attacker to steal data. The type of attack is dubbed port smash, and it's done simply by overwhelming the multi-threading feature that allows the attack to get access to the threads and steal open SSL decryption keys. And when they have open SSL decryption keys, they can read any of the data that's going back and forth from that device. Again, another weakness in encryption. We need to be on the lookout for any patches in the vulnerabilities for both the Intel flaw and the self-encrypting hard drives. Accused CIA leaker faces new challenges of leaking information from prison. 4 months ago, he was indicted over leaking the largest amount of classified information in the company's history. This attacker designed hacking tools and related malware that the NSA and CIA used to break into adversaries, likely foreign countries. This person was put in prison because of child pornography, which is a terrible thing. So some of the concerns of this is even the federal government that hires the best of the best of class cyber attackers and cyber defenders of our nation do go rogue. And when they go rogue, they can spill or steal or share information that they should not be sharing that can put our country into cyber security danger, if you will. Another chip flaw. This one is a Bluetooth flaw, and there was two critical vulnerabilities. It's dubbed the bleeding bit. Again, it is a symptom where they're sending more traffic to the chip than it's able to handle, which causes another buffer overflow attack, which can allow them to run arbitrary code on the computer, take command and control, and pretty much own the device. Here's another example of a 0-day, meaning that it is a patch that it is a vulnerability that has been made known to the world that a patch does not exist. So if you have such a Bluetooth chipset, you should either be turning it off or be anxiously awaiting the patch for it. New MacBook disconnects microphone when you shut the lid. This is a great new feature. A lot of people have been concerned that their electronic devices are listening to them. So I like this idea. So this is one of the few articles tonight that is actually a positive article. So applaud Apple for that. On a more negative side of Apple, just hours after they released the new iOS 12.1, there is iPhone bypass hacks that were released. So again, security of devices is only as good as encryption, which we've talked about 2 or 3 encryption flaws tonight, and it's also only as good as the way that you authenticate to the device, whether it be a Face ID or a password or a thumbprint. If you can bypass those, encryption's worthless, and pretty much all of your other controls to limit access to data is null and void if the device thinks that user is the person that is providing the correct credentials. New bug in Windows 10 will allow, it's actually a bug that was patched. They patched it in secrecy, meaning that they didn't really let the world know about it until they patched it. This allowed their App Store to access pretty much every file on their computer, their client's computers, without their access. That doesn't mean there was a breach, that just meant it was possible. I can't remember if I talked about this last week, but the new release of Windows Defender allows it to run in sandbox mode. Sandbox mode is a great feature, meaning that it runs in a separate portion of memory that will not cause a compromise of other portions of memory on the computer if it does become compromised itself. So in other words, if someone takes over or malware renders the Windows Defender ineffective, it should not affect the rest of the system. So it is recommended you turn that feature on. Hackers target Telegram and Instagram in Iran. They use basically BGP or Border Gateway Protocol attacks and other types of manipulation to copycat a website to make it look like it is the original. Nothing really more here to say besides it is really important to have web filters in your company and only go to websites that you can have a high level of trust in. In fact, Telegram is a software that they consider to be grayware, which it does what it's supposed to, but it does more than it tells you that it's going to do. VMware is a company that makes virtual machines or virtual software, virtual servers that allow a physical server that is basically one box of one physical blade with one physical chip that allows many virtual server software packages to run on it. Anyway, the point of tonight isn't to discuss VMware, but this company unveils a new blockchain service. And this is one of the first that I am aware of a situation where a company has started to use blockchaining for something other than digital currency. So, as it says on the screen here, the blockchain is a distributed database where blocks are linked to one another and protected against unauthorized modification using cryptography. Transactions are only written after they've been verified by the majority of nodes. So another way to look at that is a blockchain is a type of distributed ledger that once something is written, it cannot be modified, and before it is written, it gets confirmation that the information that it is writing is legitimate from multiple sources. So VMware is using this to provide enterprises with a decentralized trust infrastructure. Another way to look at it is to provide authentication for an enterprise. So this is something that I'm going to be keeping my eye on to see if blockchaining has a role in the enterprise for authentication. I think it will, but this is the first baby step towards it. So HSBC Bank had a breach in October, and they suspended access to all of those accounts. The breach included phone number, email addresses, date of birth, account numbers, account type, balances, etc. So pretty much the whole enchilada. Not good news. It doesn't go over how the breach occurred. It didn't say whether it was phishing or lack of patching. Not really sure. But this article is a reminder that companies that are hosting privacy data must make sure they're following all fundamental best practices to protect such information, because breaches do occur. I don't believe that's the only breach we're going to talk about tonight. The U.S. government has a National Insider Threat Task Force program that was initiated by President Obama after WikiLeaks, which is a website that leaks privacy data. After WikiLeaks published Iraq war logs. I would think that after the president put out a memorandum requiring more protection of secret data in the federal government, it would have worked, but unfortunately it didn't. It was after that that Edward Snowden leaked many of his data from the NSA. The attacker group called Shadow Brokers began to leak NSA tools that they uncovered. One of them was an internal blue, which was used last year for the WannaCry data encryption mess that we had on our hands. Vault 7, which we talked about just in a few slides ago, was the biggest breach of CIA files ever released. So the, they have updated this program because the first one did not work. This particular release compromises 19 elements to help reduce advanced insider threat. So it is to be, time will tell if this will actually improve the security of the federal government. Facebook blocks 115 accounts on the eve of election. So tonight is election day. Uh, Ever since Donald Trump has been elected, there's been belief that there's been meddling in the election campaign. Facebook has been proactive, so I'll applaud them for that, and they've disabled these accounts from foreign entities trying to interfere with the election. Iran accuses Israel of a failed cyber attack. So supposedly Israel has attacked Iran. It doesn't really say what it is, but this slide is another indicator that nation states are actively involved in cyber espionage and cyber warfare against each other. An internet relay chat bot is targeting the Internet of Things devices. That's just a big fancy word for any device that is connected to the internet. It could be your refrigerator, it could be your Amazon Echo or your Nest thermostat, whatever it might be. I would predict that there's going to be more and more focus on hacking Internet of Things devices in the future. This article talks about the deficiency of cybersecurity experts. Supposedly, there's a shortage of 2.9 million cybersecurity professionals worldwide, with 2.14 being in Asia and only half a million in the United States. Still, a half a million is pretty good. Um, The point of this is if you have any interest in cybersecurity or if this is your career, this is your opportunity to shine. So go ahead and take that opportunity and make the best of it. But more importantly, our nation needs people in this area, so be the one that helps out. So the Office of Secretary of State Brian Kemp basically said that there was an attack on the Georgia's online voter database. There's nothing here in this article to substantiate that. But again, we have fears that attacks are going on, whether it is legitimate or not. Um, it will make the news. This article we already talked about. But basically, this ex-CIA employee has been trying to transmit secrets from prison after he has already did the breach 4 months ago. Here's another breach. The Radisson Hotel Group has informed members of its rewards program that their information has been breached. Nothing really significant here, but again, breaches make the news. Breaches look bad for your company. And this is our second breach of the night. I think I kind of got out of sync here. So let me get caught back up here. I think I'm getting really close. Sorry about that. Here's our third breach of the night, maybe the fourth. I've lost track. The top Australian defense firm reports serious cyber breach, which is a major U.S. Navy contractor. They have admitted their personnel files were breached as a subject of extortion from an unknown offender. Email addresses and phone numbers have been were accessed, and they're not sure what else. I don't know what to say besides breaches are in the news almost every week, and they're nonstop, especially if you are a government entity. You are a large target. New bill poses prison for executives misusing customer data. That's pretty serious. In the past, it's only been fines. Now it's the owners, CEOs, CIOs, Chief Information Security Officers, whoever it might be. If they are proven to have misused customer information, they're going to go to jail. That is pretty serious. That's proposed bill, by the way. It's not official. U.S. accuses China and I believe Taiwan firms for stealing secrets from a chip giant named Micron. Doesn't really go much more into that, but again, here's evidence that we have cyber espionage going on from one country to another. This slide talks about industrial control facilities, which could be for oil, water, sewer, gas, electric, in similar type industries, are routinely having malware infections from a USB drive. And the reason for this is because these industries take their industrial control systems and what we call air gap them from the internet. So they do not have a direct or an indirect connection to the internet. So the way you update these systems is through USB drives. And it appears that they do not have a good process to scan these devices for malware. Next article again focuses on the industrial control sector. And it says that the energy sector has more attacks than most of other industries, which is not surprising to me because there is a lot to be gained if you're a threat actor, if you're able to take down the power of a country. For example, when Russia attacked Ukraine almost 2 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, they were able to bring down the entire electric grid of Ukraine in the month of December, the coldest month of the year, for 6 or 7 hours. That is a very successful cyber attack. Law enforcement faces dilemma when accessing online social media when they are investigating reports. So if law enforcement is looking at Facebook and Twitter, it's they're being the question is, are they trying are they is doing so protecting safety, or is it an invasion of privacy? This whole concept of how far can the nation go into looking at social media and other things to protect our citizens rather than eavesdrop on our citizens. Google now has added a new security feature because we all know that phishing attacks result in compromising of passwords, and a lot of companies have the entire database compromised, and once you've had an entire database compromised, your credentials are compromised in likely many different locations. So this new feature runs after you've entered a user ID and password. It does a risk assessment that requires JavaScript to be enabled, and it's looking to see if there's anything suspicious. And if there is, um, I, I think it blocks your access. I'm not really sure, but that's the concept of what their new feature is. Cisco has a new zero-day vulnerability. Again, a zero-day is when a vulnerability or a hole in security has been made aware of that the manufacturer, in this case Cisco, has not had a patch for. So if you own these Cisco devices, you should take any necessary controls to protect yourself until then and patch when the patch is available. So the European nations have passed the General Data Protection Regulation, which is the first national regulation on data privacy. Last week we talked about the Facebook breach of GDPR, and they had the full enforcement of the maximum penalty of, I think, 500,000 euros. This breach was from Canada, and they have sent their second notice to the firm. So GDPR, they are trying to bite with big angry teeth to any company that has had a data breach. In a previous slide, we talked about the worldwide shortage of cybersecurity specialists. This slide talks about a proposal for the United States Cybersecurity Civilian Corps, which is proposed a 25,000 member strong volunteer cybersecurity personnel that would work across the nation. Here's another federal employee that has been in New Mexico and will be sentenced for up to 10 years for computer fraud. And the last article of tonight, the U.S. accuses China of hacking aerospace and tech companies. I guess that is a somewhat similar article that we have already talked about. So that pretty much wraps up all of the articles of tonight. To summarize what we've talked about, we saw 3 or 4 companies in the past week with a data breach. We saw a couple 0 days. We talked about the lack of shortage of cybersecurity individuals or professionals worldwide, and we've seen where states or foreign countries are using cybersecurity against each other. And we talked about a couple improvements, such as Apple's auto turn off camera and Google's extra check after login. So that ends this week's half hour on security, and I hope you tune in next week, and please subscribe. Thank you.